Now is the time from Okan.
Good morning, everyone. I will also be talking about SG20 activities. Within SG20, we are organized around, it's a study group for smart cities and smart and sustainable communities and cities using IoT. We are organized around questions, and there are 7 questions under the study group 20. The 7th one is the one that I'm actually co-rapporteur for, which is about evaluation and assessment of smart and sustainable cities. So I will just briefly go through some of the work that we have done. But before maybe we go into the details, why do we do these standards? Just as a reminder, as a recap, we can say that standards are commonly agreed, unified documents. So we come to a consensus at the end by going through a process. And it expedites and accelerates implementations and decisions. So they create efficiencies actually for us. And they, in a way, shortcut some of the decisions that we make. So that's quite important for especially member states, cities, communities that utilize these standards. And it also anticipates requirements. We all sometimes reinvent the wheel. We have the same challenges, common challenges, but standards help us to shortcut this. And at least, give us the common requirements at the end of the day. And they facilitate participation in cooperation. Incorporates diverse perspectives. This is very important because within the study group, we are working with all member states within the ITU. So when we formulate these standards, there are diverse perspectives, different views, that come into the picture. So there are really long discussions sometimes, but they are for the betterment of the standards as we formulate them. And finally, there's the knowledge exchange. I think that's a given. That's part of the process. And standards also enable interoperability. We've been talking about it, platforms, how we communicate. So it's going to help also, standards are going to help in terms of interoperability. And they reduce cost for the implementers. So these are quite important in terms of standards. Just before the meeting, actually, I was in the website of the ITU, just to give you an overview. Within the SG20 study group, there are under study 77 work items at the moment. This is directly from the website, and 60 approved recommendations. So as you can see, there's a broad set of work that's going on within the study group. And I will zoom into question 7, which is evaluation and assessment of smart, sustainable cities and communities. We have also a list of work items that we are working on, but I will go through 2 standards that we have developed so far as examples here. The first one is Y.4905, and it's the Smart Sustainable City Impact Assessment. So as you can see, all the cities are undertaking smart city initiatives, but it's quite important to assess the impact of these initiatives, in fact. Sometimes we tend to forget that. We jump on implementations, we have use cases, proof of concepts, right? We directly go deep in it. But there are certain actually initiatives whose impact need to be assessed. They play a very important role for the city itself. So this standard helps us to assess the impact. And impact is basically identifying the future consequences of a current or intended action item. So we are probably looking more in terms of looking at future and trying to assess the impact of our smart city projects. And within the standard, through discussions, we have come up with 3 areas of impact: social, economic, and environmental. So these 3 areas, when we do the impact assessment, are the areas that we can look at. And I will just briefly go through them because the document has all the details. You can all have access to the standard if you want. Within the social, 2 things are important. When we talk about social, it's either the individuals or the communities. So the standard identifies what are some of the issues about individuals and the community. So if you look at on the individual side, on the right-hand side, we have things like health, well-being, freedom, fears, aspirations. Those are important for individuals. And then on the social side, on the community side, we have the lifestyle, culture, community, participation, and engagement. So as we take these initiatives, for example, we talk about 5G health. We've been talking about it in the last couple of days. again, that's a health impact for the individuals, for example. So we might end up doing an impact assessment for that. I'm just giving you examples. Or when we do, I don't know, a major, for example, construction project in a city, the community might be impacted. You know, they might have certain maybe concerns about it. So all these individual or community-related concerns would be addressed under the social impact. So that's one dimension, social dimension. And then the second dimension is the economic dimension. You know, this takes a lot of attention, actually, especially for the city administrators, governments, politicians. So within the economic impact, we can look at the value added to the economy, the GDP impact in terms of employment, taxes maybe, labor force quality. All these issues are under here. And two methods are indicated. If you have the input-output model, the Leontief input-output model of the economy, you can easily generate the economy impact for the city, for the project itself. That's the top-down approach. And then we can also have a bottom-up approach, which is the econometric models, the usual regression models that we can use to assess the economic impact. Again, because of time limitations, I'm not going to go to any of these details, but these are available methods for cities. So we have the social, and then we have the economic impact also. And the third one, as you can guess, is the environmental impact. Again, we are, especially climate change is a major concern today. We talk about environmental impact, and below that dimension, environment, we have identified actually 5 areas, as you see. It could have an impact in terms of water as a resource, energy, waste, greenhouse gas emissions, and we lumped all the others under the category others. So these 5 are identified within the standard as main environmental impact areas. Others might be maybe, for example, green areas in a city, fisheries, you know, biodiversity. All these would be under the others. And if you look at, excuse me, the real applications, things like IoT and smart city solutions, they tend to have a positive impact in terms of environment. For example, it creates efficiencies for water, for energy. We do savings actually for them. Or we enhance their quality, like the quality of water, or you know, the continuous provisioning of energy, for example. So they tend to have a positive impact, but there are certain things which might also have an adverse impact. So we might hit the economy dimension positively, but the environment dimension negatively. So it's not necessary that we hit all these 3 dimensions in a positive manner, in an affirmative manner. There might also be adverse impacts. So that's why the impact assessment is actually very important at the end of the day. We need to understand where are the gains of our initiatives and where we lose in general. The standard then goes into scoping the boundaries of impact assessment. We are not necessarily saying that you should be conducting impact assessment for all the projects, but maybe certain sizable projects can be included in the impact assessment. So this scoping has 3 dimensions. First one is geography. When we do the impact assessment, are we talking about the entire city or a community, for example? What's the geographical boundary of the impact assessment? That's the first factor that we take into account. Second one is which initiatives are we including? The smart city portfolio might be 100 maybe projects going on in the city, but we might say we will conduct this assessment maybe for 1, 2, a handful of them. So that's the second scoping. And the third one, as expected, is the impact type. I mentioned 3 types, social, economic, and environmental, but we don't have to do all those 3. We can also do the impact assessment maybe just for environmental dimension, or environmental and economic, or maybe all 3. So this is another scoping decision that we make when we do the impact assessment. So the standard goes into those. And finally, once we have done the impact assessment, we need to make a decision. Because now we know the impact for the initiative that we have done. We can either accept, which is the first option, all the impacts, the potential impact. I say potential because this is future casting, right? We are looking at future. So we accept the potential impacts and move forward, which is the positive scenario. Or we maybe identified certain things where we need to reduce the adverse impacts. Let me give you an example. I'll give it from the data side. Maybe we have an initiative like sharing data within the city for certain things. And people on the social side, when we do the assessment, people might not feel comfortable that their data is being shared or that city data is being shared, for example. So to reduce the impact, we might either communicate better, we come up with a way to explain it to people better, or we do a policy maybe, a regulation around it, a data law around it. So we are trying to reduce the adverse impact that we have identified. It's just an example, but it depends on the impact at the end of the day. On the environment side, we might come up with others. Third one is, so we can either accept, reduce, and the third one is monitor the impact. We know there's an impact. We start running the project in the city, and we try to see if it's really happening, the adverse impacts are happening in reality or not. And then we take an action almost on the spot as the project progresses. So this is monitoring, running it, but monitoring it. The fourth one, the final one, is avoiding the impact, which means we don't even undertake the project. We did an impact assessment. Maybe there's a big backlash from the society, from the people, from the individuals and the communities for whatever reason. Then we avoid the impact and not undertake the project. So this is the first one that I want to talk about, the standard 4905. The second one is 4904, which is Smart Sustainable Cities Maturity Model. Now, again, as cities, we are undertaking all these initiatives. The maturity model tries to help us to kind of estimate the progression of the city as a smart city. And it's a framework. We made it very flexible. We had actually lots of debates and discussions on this. We went through several iterations. We tried to make it as flexible as we can for any city of any size to utilize this maturity model. So it'll kind of help them assess their current situation as well as formulating a development strategy and outline the necessary milestones as they proceed with their initiative. Again, it has three dimensions. I'm not going to go through because we just went through in the other one, social, economic, and environmental. They can have a different level with respect to these three dimensions. So the smart city project, for example, might have a very rich set of action items for the environment, but maybe very basic on the social side and kind of mediocre maybe on the economy side. So we have different levels of maturity with respect to each dimension. This is directly from the document itself. We have 5 levels in this standard, in this recommendation, as ITU calls it. 5 maturity levels for, as you can see, 6 almost dimensions, I would say, or 6 domains or areas, from strategy to infrastructure to data services, applications, assessment, and KPIs performance. Usually level 1 is just the fact that they are identified. For example, if I just have a strategy in place, as you can see on the top left corner, the overall strategy is developed, I'm in level 1. So identifying something without taking an action on it would be maturity level 1. Maturity level 5, I'm going to jump all the way down, is we've identified it, we've actually aligned it with our initiatives, we are running it, it's in place, we are coordinating with agencies, and we are even continuously improving on it. So reviewing our strategy, for example, and continuously improving it. Similarly, for the others, the same thing. Now, level 1 is identification. Level 3, roughly, the middle level, is that things are in place, but maybe not cross the agencies, not cross different organizations in the city administration. So we are almost having a silo approach, but we are running things perfectly. And then level 4 would be cross-coordination, collaboration among the agencies. And level 5, collaboration plus doing everything right and continuously improving. So that's how you can think about these maturity levels and different aspects for it. And the last slide that I have for the, I'm just simplifying things. So we have these aspects, but the important thing is the indicators also. We've been talking in the last couple of days about U4SSE indicators. Today we will have a detailed session even on it. And we have ITU standard, the Y.4903, the indicators, and the U4SSE KPIs. Or cities can also have their own particular or specific KPIs. We try to make it, again, as flexible as possible. So we recommend using the international KPI standards, but even the cities can incorporate their own particular specific areas. For example, in the morning, I was listening to the Spanish panel. Tourism is very important. There's a lot of action item being done on the tourism. Maybe the KPIs, the list might have one basic or two basic indicators because, the U4SSE KPIs cover everything. So you can go deeper maybe and have a handful of KPIs instead of only one for tourism. So again, in terms of the standard itself, level 1 is the baseline. Level 5 is your long-term target. What do you want to reach in 2 years, 3 years, based on your horizon for the strategy? And then you put intermediate values for the level 4, 3, and 2. So level 1 is your baseline, level 5 is your long-term target, and then you work backwards and fill the other levels. So you have a roadmap now, and you do this for all the KPIs, by the way. As you can see, all the dimensions of social, economic, for example, U4SSE has almost like 100 KPIs in it. So you will do this work of setting targets and baselining for all the indicators that are in your strategy. So that's the maturity model for cities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hakan.